John overcame the adversity of being enslaved. He taught himself how to read in the night schools because he was refused a formal education. And he was definitely an adventurer in terms of looking at his trajectory from one being enslaved, fighting in the Civil War between 1863 and 1865, uh, doing the best thing he ever did, which was marrying my great grandmother, and then moving the family out west. So, all along that pathway, there's evidence of John being active in political, business, and also society.
Land ownership and real estate have long shaped opportunity, influence, and legacy. Today I'm joined by Maisha Barnett to explore the life of John Conna, his work in real estate, and the impact he had on his community. Hello, Maisha. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Maisha. We're so excited to speak with you today.
Likewise, I'm happy to be here.
Well, great, Maisha. Can you tell us more about who you are and how you're connected to John Conna?
Yes. So as you mentioned, my name is Maisha Barnett, last name Barnett, and I am the product of two Northwest Black pioneers. I'm the fourth generation Washingtonian. My paternal great grandparents were John and Mary Conna, who migrated to Washington State in 1883. And my other paternal grandfather migrated to Washington State from the Midwest in 1888.
Great. For someone who's never heard of John before, how would you introduce him?
I would introduce him as larger than life for the most part. Growing up, he was a mythical figure for me. And in the past few years, when I started doing genealogy research, could accurately describe him as an icon, a trailblazer, and also someone who was highly connected and influential in the late 1800s, early 1900s Washington State, but also someone who had a very complex and sometimes contradictory personality.
What do you know about John's work in real estate and the land that he owned in Washington?
Oh, right. So through my research, I've been able to identify and document John's land ownership in the cities of Federal Way, Tacoma, what is currently Joint Base Lewis McChord. But then also I have leads in the cities of Sumner and possibly even Vashon Island. And I just want to go back to say that, with regards to John, what's so profound is the fact that during his first 20 years of life, he was enslaved and then he fought in the Civil War. And lived in the states of Connecticut and Kansas before migrating to the state of Washington. So until then, he had always worked as like a porter or an insurance, and then made that transition to real estate once he was employed by Allen C. Mason in the city of Tacoma.
Wow, such a complex story. I'm actually from Federal Way, so that's kind of nice to hear.
Okay.
How did his real estate work impact his family and the Black community at the time?
Well, at the time, again, he was a trailblazer. So there's evidence of him being in deals with the Still brothers on Still Road, sorry, and also advocating for the widening of Military Road. In Federal Way, the Connas had a 157-acre homestead, which today honors him in the form of Conna Park, which was recently renamed in his honor. It's 25 of the 157 acres that they previously owned. And also he held a polling precinct at his home in Adelaide, which is also in the Federal Way area. So there are many ways, like traces, or what I call history in our landscape, that I'm now trying to reveal in John's honor.
Absolutely. And then from a planning perspective, what lessons do you think modern cities could learn from figures like John Conna?
I would say just do it, really, because John Conna, along with many of his contemporaries, whether it was Captain Fife um, or the Still Brothers, or even the Warehousers, they were entrepreneurial, and they were adventurers. Later in John's life, he caught gold fever and ended up moving to Alaska, where he also became a landowner there. And then also just like don't hold back in the face of fear. But stepping back to like John's impact in terms of his community in the city of Tacoma, uh, his land ownership is tied to historic places, including the Tacoma Armory, which is located at 15th and C Street, now on Broadway. And John served as a lessee and a manager there. There are articles of him, sometimes in conflict with uh, folks who didn't want to pay their bills, and other times just referring to him as being the manager and actively uh, managing other properties throughout the city of Tacoma. The Connas also own several properties, which I've identified in the form of like transactions that were published in newspapers, and including homes. So they had a home on North I Street in the city of Tacoma, on North Slope between 1890 and 1899. And then also, specifically relating to the Black community, John Conna was the first Black elected official in the state of Washington as Sergeant at Arms. And he is credited with supporting or really kind of lobbying for the first Public Accommodations Act of Washington State in 1890. But then after that act was passed, he challenged it because he was refused service at New York Kitchen, which is now Dorky's Arcade. So he sued New York's Kitchen, and he lost, but again, he never shied away from putting forth the effort.
Yeah, clearly there's a lot of good qualities and things to remember, but what do you want most people to understand and remember about him the most?
Again, from his humble beginnings, John overcame the adversity of being enslaved. He taught himself how to read in the night schools because he was refused a formal education. And he was definitely an adventurer in terms of looking at his trajectory from one, being enslaved, fighting in the Civil War between 1863 and 1865, uh, doing the best thing he ever did, which was marrying my great grandmother, and then moving the family out west. So, all along that pathway, there's evidence of John being active in political, business, and also society, and sort of just blazing a trail for those behind him, but definitely serving as an example of what can be versus what people tell you who they think you are, right? So I think he asserted his rights of ownership and his rights of freedom, and his right to just explore.
That's awesome. Now, didn't he also have a real estate office or practice?
He did, yes. He had a real estate office in the city of Tacoma for several years. And in addition to, so there's the homestead and Federal Way. His ownership, his personal land ownership, was also in the north end of Tacoma in what's called Conna's Addition, Conna's Lake Tracks, and Puget, I'm sorry, Park and Boulevard Addition in Tacoma. And also there's evidence of transactions that he had in, trying to remember the name of it, but another area of Tacoma. I can't remember the name of it right now. But yeah, it just seems like he was very active for a relatively short period of time. So from the mid 1880s, when they arrived, shortly after they arrived, like in 1885, like 2 years after that, is when he started, for example, the 5-year application process, to be a homestead owner. In fact, I own a copy of his 35-page application that I ordered from the National Archives. And in it, it includes receipts. It also includes a full inventory of all of their possessions, as well as testimonies from neighbors as witnesses to their ownership, um, but also the improvements that they made to the land at the time.
Wow. John has quite a background, but I want to hear more about your background. Can you share more about you?
Yes. So I kind of jokingly say that I'm a recovering banker. For the first 20 years of my life, I worked in financial services and wealth management, but I am currently a historic preservation specialist at For Culture, which is the cultural and funding services agency for King County. And my role there entails like grant making and historic preservation and supporting new and emerging cultural and science organizations. Overall, I support like 7 different grants, but then also I staff the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee. So,
But in addition to that, are there any other projects that you're working on?
yes. Outside of that, I'm very active in my community. So I have my own neighborhood group called Crown Hill Neighborhood Improvement Group, which was sparked by um, basically wanting to make some infrastructure improvements in the neighborhood, and particularly in response to 2 RVs that caught fire beneath an underpass, and the city basically didn't do any repairs to that. But now we are thankfully able to move that project forward. I also organize Jane's walks throughout Seattle. I've also lead my own Jane's walk in the neighborhood of Crown Hill. And then also for fun, just for fun, I meet with friends in the built environment and conduct interviews with them. But also, it's an opportunity for me to visit and catch up with them as well.
Absolutely. Clearly, you've worked on a lot of projects. What's the one that you're most particularly proud of?
I would say that was my first project, which is Powell Barnett Park. It's named after my paternal grandfather, who came here with his father, Powell Benjamin. And then upon marrying my grandmother, who was the youngest child of John and Mary Conna, they relocated to the city of Seattle in 1906. So they relocated to the Lushai neighborhood. Powell Barnett Park is pretty close to that off of MLK between Alder and Jefferson Streets. The park was named in his honor in 1969. I am the youngest grandchild of both John and Mary Conna, but also the youngest grandchild of my grandparents, Powell and Catherine Barnett. So I came along, and it seems that I was the only one who really had an interest in a huge interest in family history. And in later years, I decided to do some improvements at Powell Barnett Park, which was in 2006 in partnership with Starbucks Coffee Company. And Starbucks was inspired by the plan and felt that it just needed an injection of love. So that came from them in the form of a $550,000 gift, which then attracted a lot of in-kind donations, such as like 70,000 square feet of sod, and also monetary donations to the project. And after 5 months of planning in our partnership, we redeveloped the park over the course of 7 days. So it was deemed the ultimate park makeover.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And the connection, obviously, to your family, I bet means a lot. What impact on this project or another project have you seen on the community since it was completed?
Right. The redevelopment of Powell Barnett Park, again, it was named in his honor in 1969, and the redevelopment occurred in 2006. Overnight, that space transformed. It's 4.5 acres, 4.4 acres approximately, well, exactly. And in it, prior to the redevelopment, it had one tire swing. And then we installed compound play equipment, which at that time had the largest amount of compound active play equipment in all of the United States, which attracted lots of kids. We received rave reviews from like Parent Map magazine as well as even Disney. And the park really became a destination, not only for nearby neighbors, but also put the park on the map for the city. And I would say the region as a whole. And it just attracted more events like reunions, whether family or school reunions, church gatherings, people holding birthday parties in the park. But there are also formal activities like or informal, such as people playing frisbee, football, soccer. And then in recent years, it has even drawn the Seattle Opera to do productions in the park.
Wow, quite a story. So, Maisha, you and I met as students at the University of Washington, and now Shalomi is one of my students as I get to teach there. And so, yeah, a lot of this is just about giving back and sharing knowledge and information we had. So, for you, if there was one bit of information you might share with her or other students or other people in the community, what would that be for you?
Right. Well, based on my own experience, because I'm very much an introvert and a loner, and a lot of these projects or initiatives I start on my own and then work collaboratively with local groups, is that I would say the number one thing is the power we have as individuals to make significant change is unlimited. And that's also a lesson that I learned from researching my ancestors, whether it was John and Mary Conna or my grandfather, Powell S. Barnett, is the fact that they were of humble means and made a huge impact for generations to come. And the second thing I would say, which I think is universal, is the more you learn, the more there is to learn. So never think that you have all of the answers because, you can always learn something from other people and from different perspectives, but then also just at a different level as well.
Absolutely. On that topic of learning, is there any book that has greatly influenced your life or your career?
This is a really hard question to answer because I read a lot of books and I love them all. They're my friends. They're my best friends. Um, yeah, I couldn't say that there's a single book because there are books that have made like touched me profoundly in different ways for different reasons. So, as relating to a career, I don't really know. Um, Generally in life, I would say The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell. And also, personally, I like a lot of historical nonfiction as a general genre.
So, Maisha, I understand you also have a Jupiter Studios. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Well, Studio Jupiter is a placeholder for all of my built environment endeavors. I do various things, including profiling friends who are in the design, creative, and built environment professions. And this is capturing friends primarily in their intimate spaces, whether it's at work or at home, and also an opportunity for the public to get to know them a little better. And it's called Jupiter Dwellings.
Nice, nice. Okay, well, if people want to connect with you or learn more, what would be the best way for people to do that?
Right. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, Maisha Barnett. But you can also find me on Instagram at MB Studio Jupiter.
Well, Maisha, thanks for coming on with us today and sharing about yourself and John. And it was inspiring and I learned it a lot. So thank you for your time today.